Hi, welcome you all to this special class on Unacademy Unlock YouTube platform. Today, as part of our special class, we will be looking at one of the important topics in our related social issues, impact of globalization on culture. This is the topic that we are looking at. And before starting our class, let us look at the courses offered on an academy platform. So these are all the top rankers, as you know, this year. These are all the top rankers. You have a second ranker, 9th, 10th, 13th, 14th, 16th, and 20th. All of them. So an academy has around 7 rankers in top 20 ranks, and then around 20 in top 100, and around 143 in top 761 ranks. Then the new batches are starting from 29th December. You have Mission 2022, Expedition 2022, Mission 2023, and Expedition 2023. If you are taking admissions for these batches with 1 year and above GS and combo subscription, 20 GS books will be given to you. 20 GS books will be given to you. Around 5 optionals were started on 8th December, and 3 more optionals on 15th December. Political science, sociology, maths, philosophy, history, management, again history, and then geography. You can take admission into all those courses, and you can have your 1 year GS subscription along with optional combo at 55 rupees 523 only. And on top of it, you can get 5% extra also. You can get 5% extra also on this combo using our code PKS10. You can subscribe now. GS and optional, you're getting at you know uh, 55,523. On top of it, you're also getting a 10% extra uh, discount using our code. Then you have UPSC Combat. This 56 questions will be there. You have to answer them in around 60 minutes. This is on 26th December and 2nd January at 11 a.m. The questions will be curated by top educators of an academy. You can also have detailed sorry video solutions for all these questions. You will also get sorry real-time all India rank also, and you can win so many prizes also. Like for first to third ranks, 100% scholarship will be there, and 75% scholarship for 4 to 10, 50% for 11 to 50, and 25% for 51 to 500. This is free. You can take this one on 26th December and 2nd January. You also have a free test series, Nunal's Monday, top 20 daily current affairs test series, Abhiyan daily static quiz 2.0 also. And then accomplish your mission with an academy. You have live mentoring, study planner, and mains question and answer practice, open house with educators. Then you can also get instant loans at 0% interest rate. There is no processing fee. You have flexible tenure and minimal paperwork also. So this is what the Unacademy is offering on its platform. So let us come back and look at what we have to discuss today as part of our special class. Let us see what we have to look at. So what we are looking at here today is impact of globalization on Indian culture. As you can see, almost every year in social issues, every year at least one question will be asked about this topic, and not only that, it will be asked in your essay paper also. It has been asked in essay also. Impact of globalization on culture. So I don't have to tell you about the importance of this topic from your examination point of view. And another thing is that these kind of topics what you have to remember is that you don't get any structured study material for this kind of topics, because it requires what you call more of a, it requires more of a understanding than reading any books. So what are we looking at? What is this globalization? What are the different dimensions of globalization? Then what are the consequences of globalization? What is this India's culture? And how globalization has impacted India's culture? What is criticism of globalization in terms of its impact on Indian culture? And criticism against globalization itself, is it right or wrong? And how globalization has benefited India's culture? Then what can be done to protect and promote India's culture to benefit out of globalization? So this is what we will be discussing as part of this topic. Right. In between, you can also ask questions. Also, if you have any doubts, you can always ask questions. I'll see the questions there, and I will also answer them. So, what exactly is this globalization? People think that this globalization is a recent phenomenon. It started only in 1990s, which is not the case. Globalization has always been there since the beginning of civilization. If you look at it, it if you go by anthropological studies, the earliest human race, it has started in Africa. From there, they moved to this Middle East. From there, they came to Europe, India, and different parts of the world. That is what we call globalization, right? So it was there right from the days of the beginning of civilization. People are moving from one place to other place. They are going from one region to other region. Why? Because in search of livelihood, in search of livelihood, because the conditions are different, and when the conditions become difficult, they want to move on to other places in search of a better life. When the conditions become very difficult and different, right, then they will move on to other places for a better life. And that is what we have seen in globalization right from the days of the beginnings of civilization. And then after that, when the civilization started early in some of the different parts of the country, different parts of the world, you can see in an ancient Indian civilization, Harappan culture, and before Sumerian civilization, then Mesopotamian civilization, Roman civilization, Greek civilization. They also had a constant interaction with each other. Even though in those days there was not much of what we call, in those days there was not much of transportation facilities. Still, you could see that in Harappan civilization, in some of the port cities, you could see that they had trading relations with the Middle East. They had trading relationship with the Mesopotamia, and that is what is globalization. And later, after that, in India, civilization developed at a far better rate than other countries. And that is the reason why India had a huge amount of contacts with the rest of the world. So basically, initially, if you look at it, this globalization is mostly for trading purposes. It is mostly for livelihood. It is mostly for survival. This globalization, people moving from one place to other place. When they move from one place to other place, what you could see is that they are taking not only with themselves the goods and services that they produce, they are also taking with themselves their food, their culture, their religion, their values, their livelihood, their traditions. That is how it spreads from one place to the other place. It has been there since the times immemorial. It has been there since the time we started our civilization. It is there since we started our civilization. That is what we say. So it has been. It is nothing new. And if you look at it, when the civilization started, what we have seen is that, as I mentioned, uh, people started moving from one place to other place in search of livelihood, and after that, in search of better trade. After that, in search of promoting their religion. That is how this globalization has started. If you go back, South India, ancient period, South India had extensive trade relations with the Roman Empire. That is what is globalization. And when the Greeks came to India, Alexander, and after that, when the Greeks had come to India, they had brought with themselves so much of their traditions and customs, and they also taken from India so many other traditions and customs also. And this result in the mixing of the cultures, traditions, customs, and everything else that enriched both the countries' administrative systems and political systems as well as cultural systems also. That is what globalization. And after that, if you proceed further, it is the religion that had become the source of globalization. It is the religion, right? They wanted to spread their religion. When, for example, during the initial times, this Jewish religion, one of the most ancient religions in India, Hinduism. So then after that, if you look at it, from Jewish religion had come to other religions, Islam and Christianity. What we call them as Abrahamic religions, Islam and Christianity. And they wanted to have more followers. So wherever they went, they wanted to convert people to their religion as part of again globalization. Wherever they went, they had converted the people. For example, take the case of Christianity. Even though its birth is in the Middle East, it had rapidly spread immediately to Europe. First it was the Roman Empire that had adopted Christianity, and it was very interesting case also. At that point of time, Roman Empire, the Roman Emperor had to decide between so many religions. He had some religions in front of him. In front of him, Islam was there. Islam, was not there. He had to choose between Jewish religion. Then he had to choose between Buddhism. Buddhism has already entered into the Roman Empire at that point of time, and he had to choose between other small sects. Finally, he had opted for Christianity. That is the reason why Christianity had spread immediately to the rest of the Europe. Had that Roman Emperor at that point of time decided to opt for any other religion, Christianity would not have spread. And of course, in the medieval times, if you look at it, there's most of these European countries, they went on expedition to other countries around the world in search of trade and better livelihood. They took with themselves the religion also. That is how it has spread. If you look at in India, again the same thing. It was Ashoka who had globalized Buddhism, had sent his emissaries to Sri Lanka and also to Southeast Asian countries and also to China. And they had spread this Buddhist religion. And then in the South India, we had the kings, Tamil kings. They had sent their emissaries to again Southeast Asia. They had sent them there, and from there they kept on, promoting Hinduism. So that is what we could see that one, and everything, as we say, is part of this globalization. Everything is part of globalization. People have this, this misperceived, misconceived concept that globalization is only restricted to only trade. Obviously, it is not the case. As I said, globalization means everything. It includes trade, it includes religion, it includes traditions, customs, food habits, culture, everything else. So this globalization has always been there since the beginning of civilization. That is what we say here. Ultimately, what do we say about globalization? Very simple. Ultimately, what do we say about globalization? We say that globalization is nothing but integrating a specific region's culture, economy, society, traditions, polity, administration with the rest of the world. That is what we say globalization. For example, it is said that Aryan culture in India had come from this Middle East. That is what Aryans had come to India from Middle East. That is part of globalization. It is said that the original culture of India is the Dravidian culture, which you find in South India. The original culture is right. That is what we say. Original culture of India, we think is Aryan culture, but that is not the case. Original culture of India you find only in this Dravidian culture. This Aryan culture had come to India, the Vedic religion. It had come to India through Middle East. That is the reason if you look at the Aryan gods, the gods of Aryan, Aryan gods, some of them are similar to the gods of Iran, Sumerian, and other civilizations. That is what you can see. So similarly, in the Greek also we have similarities. So this is what we say about what we call globalization, right? And then, right, in recent times, these are all the different dimensions of globalization that we say here. These are all the different dimensions of globalization. If you look at it, the medieval times also, come to medieval times. India was the center of activity during the 16th and 17th centuries. If you look at it, India was the richest country in the world. So that is the reason why India dominated the global traditions and cultures because India was the richest country in the world during the time of Akbar. But what is important here that you have to remember is that unlike other cultures, other traditions, and other customs, other religions also, what you can see here is that in India we don't have any colonization, we don't have any imperial ambitions of our rulers. That is what the difference between India and other countries. That is the difference between what we call the traditional Hindu culture and other cultures. That is what we say here. This is the key difference. That is the reason why you can see that Hinduism, as a religion, was restricted only to the subcontinent. It has not spread to other areas. Why? When the Hindus went to other parts of the world, they were not aggressive in terms of converting other people. Unlike what we call, you know, these religions like Islam or Christianity, they were not into conversions. They were not into other things. Even Buddhism also initially during the time of Ashoka was aggressive in terms of converting Hindus into Buddhism. But after that, Buddhism also had become more of a simple reactive religion, but not a very aggressive religion. What is the reason why we can say that these are the different things that we notice as part of globalization? As we know, if you look at it, there are some factors. There are some factors which unite the people. What are the emotions? What are the sentiments? What are those factors which unite people? It is like country, patriotism. It is like a tribal identity. You belong to a particular tribe. So, more than anything else, in the medieval times, you could see that it was religion that was uniting the people. And if you look at it, both Islam and Christianity, as well as Jewish religion, all of them had taken birth at one particular place, Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the holy place for almost all these three religions. Jerusalem is the third holiest place for Islam, and it is the birthplace of Jewish religion. It is also the birthplace of Christianity. Jesus Christ who took birth there. Now, if you look at it, why Islam and Christianity, had become so aggressive religions? What is the reason why? Now, if you see, in terms of population, global population, you have maximum. First is Christians, second one is Islam, Muslim, and third one is Hindu. And in fact, the third one is not even Hindu; it is non-believers, right? So, what is the reason why? Why? Because both these religions had taken place, had taken birth in a both of them had taken birth in deserts. And if you look at it in deserts, you can see that life is very, very difficult. Go back to 2000 years. In desert, life is very, very difficult. It is not possible for people to survive unless they stay together. This is what you have to remember. It is not possible for you people to survive unless they stay together. In those days, there was nothing like country. This concept of nationalism, this concept of nationalism had come only very recently after the Renaissance movement in Europe. Nationalism and patriotism. That means sacrificing your life for the sake of the country of your birth. In those days, there was nothing like nationalism. So how can how can you bind people together? How can you make sure that people sacrifice their life for something else? And that is when religion has come to the rescue of the people. And that is the reason why, since life in those regions is extremely difficult, they wanted to have more followers for themselves. They wanted to have more people for themselves, more followers. That is how they had become more, what we call, they had become more aggressive in terms of conversions. On the other hand, if you look at it, in Hinduism, there is nothing like conversion, because Hinduism does not have any what we call a holy book, does not have a single god, and does not have any traditions and customs. So that is the reason why, as part of globalization, even though people from India went to the rest of the world, they never colonized those countries in the name of religion. When the Britishers came to India, also, whenever East India Company and their people come to India, they would make sure that the church and also those religious preachers would always accompany them. Why? Because I just said it is about it is about you know getting more followers for yourself, getting more followers for yourself. That is what it is. So that is the reason why in medieval times this globalization was accompanied not only with the trade relationships but also with the aggressive expansion of their religion. That is the reason why you can see that in Europe, Islam and Christianity, they fought 1000-year-old war also, holy war. 1000-year-old war, holy war in Islam and Christianity. That is what we say, 1000-year-old war. Why? Because they wanted to have more followers. Why? Because they wanted to have more security and more safety for their own religion. That is why. On the other hand, Hinduism had taken birth in this Indo-Gangetic belt, and this Indo-Gangetic belt, the most fertile region in the world. So they don't need people don't have to lead community life. That's the reason why Hinduism is all about individual prayers. That's the reason why even when Indian businessmen would go to other parts of the world, they would not indulge in what we call they would not indulge in this kind of expansion of their religions. Then, what are the consequences of this globalization? What are the consequences of this globalization? So, what are we saying here? What are the consequences of this globalization? What do we say here? So, what this globalization does is this globalization will, you know, ensure integration of communities around the world, integration of countries, integration of cultures, and it will help the countries because at the end of the day, what do we say here is that no country in the world has what we call a perfect culture. No religion can be called perfect in terms of its traditions and customs. This globalization can help. This globalization can help in assimilating different cultures, in learning new traditions and customs, in expanding the horizons of the people, in bettering themselves, in betterment of the people also. So if we are not talking about here, we are not talking about here. There's a we're not talking about here the trade aspects, economic aspects. We are not talking about the trade and economic aspects. They are always there. They will always be there, and they're already there also. But what we are talking about here is overall impact on the society and culture. For example, when the Greeks came to India, they learned so many things about India's traditions and cultures, customs. They took with them so much of the cultural heritage of India. Similarly, India also benefited a lot with the Greeks coming into the country. Why? Because it is said that in India, it is said that Indians don't have a sense of history. If you look at it, when a history is written, Indians have not written history according to the time periods. For example, take the case of Ramayana and Mahabharata. We don't know exactly what was the time period of Ramayana and Mahabharata, whereas the Greeks always record the time, which is very important. That is what we can learn. We have learned from the Greek civilization when they came to India, Alexander, and later other Greek rulers also. So this is what we say here. This globalization can definitely benefit the countries around the world in terms of improving their standard of life, economic, in terms of providing new goods and services to them, in terms of helping the people to become rich, in terms of learning new traditions, customs, and cultures, and also in terms of making themselves more enlightened in the process. Enlightened in the process. This is what we say globalization, right? Then, what is India's culture here? What is India's culture here? Because if we have to talk about impact of globalization on India's culture, we should know what is this India's culture, how it has impacted, how globalization was impacted. As I said, India's culture dates back to 5,000 years, one of the most ancient civilizations, India. Please remember, 5,000 years back, we did not have any United States of America. 5,000 years back, UK was not even there, right? When Alexander invaded the whole world, as part of his invasions, he went to UK also, England. And he said that what is here for me to conquer? Nothing was there. There were no people. Some tribal communities were living there. Beyond that, nothing else. So he said that what is here for me to conquer? What is here for me to rule? He left it and came back. So those countries simply do not have any civilization at that point of time. America was discovered only 500 years back, right? That is what. Whereas if you look at it, India's culture, India's traditions, India's society, what we call it that it is 5,000 years old. At that point of time, when the rest of the world was not even thinking about how to survive, was saddled with how to survive, India had developed what we call in a the kind of civilization and culture which nobody could ever imagine. What is that one? What is that culture that we can take really proud of? India's culture. What is that culture we can take really proud of? Let us try to find out what it is. As I said, India's culture could be mostly found in its religion, in its traditions, in its customs, in its beliefs, values. What is it? Where do we find all these things? Where can we find all these things? So what we are saying here is that since in India at that point of time, we are talking about 5,000 years back, since India at that point of time was not at all concerned about survival, because India's culture was developed in this Indo-Gangetic belt. It was developed in this Indo-Gangetic belt, the most fertile region in the world. So the people were not at all looking at survival. They were looking at something else. They wanted to find the essence of life. They wanted to know what can we do to reach higher level positions in terms of their spiritual journey. And that is where we can see the development of India's culture. What we have at that point of time, we have India has developed was this the kind of thought process which nobody could ever imagine also. Later we talk about this Immanuel Kant and cosmopolitanism, wherein he said that entire world in a, is like a global village. Everyone has a right to use the resources of the entire world. We are all global citizens. That is what we have spoken about 5,000 years back as part of what is called Vasudhaiva Kutumba. The entire world is part of a family. We only talk about people as human beings. That is what is our culture. We don't divide people in the name of religion or anything else, right? And more importantly, India's culture lies in this is the most important part asking questions. Since there is no what we call authoritarian religion in India's culture, unlike Islam or Christianity, since there is no authoritarian religion, what you can see in India is that in India's culture, people are given more freedom. They are given more freedom to ask questions. They are given more freedom to raise doubts. They are given more freedom to find out answers. This is part of what we call India's culture. That means it says that don't accept anything unless it is proved in a rational manner in front of you. That is what the greatness of this India's culture. And that is what we call right now in the modern Western culture, they call it as rationality. We spoke about this long time back. For example, Upanishads. When we talk about these Upanishads, what do we say here? These Upanishads are nothing but in a form of what is called a question and answer format. You ask a question and you will get the answer. That is what we say. Ask questions and you will get answers. And never accept anything unless you know you have factual proof behind it. So they will say that ask questions about God and religion. Ask questions about what is good and what is bad. Ask questions about what is the essence of life. Ask questions about how you should behave in life. Then you will get all those answers. You will get all those answers. That is what we say. This India's culture. The essence of India's culture is giving freedom to the people, giving freedom of choice to the people, and asking the people to find out answer to all their questions rather than someone imposing their their ideas on people. That is what we say India's culture. And we have seen these kind of things in we have seen these kind of things in Upanishads, in Vedas. This is where you can see these things, right? And then proceeding further, another thing about India's culture is what we say here is that another thing that we say about India's culture is that it says that God is not different from you. There is no difference from you between you and God. It says that you can find God within you. Unlike other religions and traditions, what you can see is that there is hierarchy in other religious and traditions and customs. Whereas in India, it says that anyone you can become God with your good deeds. That is where. And another important thing here is that since there is nothing is superimposed from above, it gives you freedom of choice and it also teaches you tolerance. It says that there are different paths to realize God. It can be different paths, and all of them are equally, and all of them are equally right also. That means it never denigrates one and it never highlights other. That is what we say. There is no question of denigrating one and highlighting other. For example, if you look at other cultures, other traditions, Islam says that the only God is Allah. Christianity says that the only God is Jesus Christ, and they believe that by praying to either Allah or Christ, you will become your salvation can be there. Otherwise, rest of them are called non-believers. Whereas in India, that is not the case. It says that you can pray to any God. You can pray to any God. Still, you can reach God. It does not really matter. On the other hand, if you are right, right, On the other hand, what you know, what we say is that all these paths, whether it is Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Jainism, are equally true. That is where we talk about tolerance as part of India's culture. This is what we say: tolerance, then respect for diversity, protecting the independence, freedom of the people, and being open to new ideas, traditions, customs. What is the reason why Hinduism has survived? What is the reason why Hinduism has survived? So what we call Indian culture has survived even 5,000 years also. Please remember, from the 7th century AD onwards, you know, till 21st century, from 7th century onwards, uh, you know, till 21st century, right? For 14 centuries, that is 1400 years, Hindus were not rulers of their own country. They were not the rulers of their own country from 7th century to 20th century for 1400 years. Still, why Hinduism has survived? Why? Because the greatness of Indian culture. Why? Because they are open to diversity. They are not blind about their traditions and customs. They are not intolerant about other traditions and customs. That is where you can see the greatness of Indian culture. Being open to diversity, willing to change yourself, willing to adapt the new traditions and customs, willing to accept that diversity, willing to accept that there are other faiths that can equally help you to realize God. This is what we say in a in a this is what we say, and that is the reason why Hinduism could not be destroyed. As someone says, how can you destroy something which is not there? How can you destroy something which is not there? Hinduism is not there. That is the reason why nobody can destroy it. Why? Because in case of Hinduism, there is no single God. So that if you pray to that God only, you will be called Hindu. What Hinduism says? What does it says? It says that you pray to any God, you are a Hindu. There is no single test book or a holy test book, holy test. Islam has a Quran. You have to read Quran 5 times in a day. Then only you will be called a devout Muslim. And then you don't then there is no traditions and custom that bind them together. For example, in Islam, Friday prayers you have to offer. In Christianity, Sunday mass. Whereas in Hinduism, there is nothing like that. If you go to temple, you are called Hindu. If you don't go to temple, still you are a Hindu. If you believe in God, you are a Hindu. If you believe in any God, you are a Hindu. If you don't believe in God, then also you are a Hindu. Even if you don't believe in God, you are a Hindu. So how can you destroy what we call this Hinduism? How can you destroy? Which is not there. Right? How can you destroy Hinduism? If you pray to Christ, you take the case of Ramakrishna Paramahansa. What did he do? He epitomizes true Indian culture. What did Ramakrishna Paramahansa do? What did he do? He was a great devotee of goddess Durga, Kali. Then he wanted to experience, Christianity and Islam. He stopped going to temple. He stopped praying to goddess. Then he started praying to Jesus Christ. And then he just only prayed to Jesus Christ and nothing else. Then what happened? Within a short period of time, he could see Jesus Christ. He could become Christian. He could see Jesus Christ in his meditation. That is what he did the same with other religions. That is what is Hinduism. Why? Because it gives you that freedom of choice. It gives you that you know, you know, it gives you the freedom of choice. He could realize Jesus Christ, right? It gives you that kind of freedom of choice. That is what India's culture, diversity, openness, integration, freedom of choice. These are all part of India's culture. Now, let us move forward and look at other things, right? How globalization has impacted India's culture. How this globalization has impacted India's culture. Let us try to see this, right? How this globalization has impacted India's culture. As I said, again, when people talk about globalization impacting India's culture, you know, as I said, when people talk about impact of globalization on India's culture, what do we say here? People believe that we are only talking about the past 30 years. 30 years in the life of a country is nothing. We give unnecessarily too much of importance to the immediate past, in the process ignoring very significant history also. We give unnecessarily too much of importance to the immediate past, right? So when we talk about impact of globalization on India's culture, as I said, you have to talk about the 5,000 years of India's history, how it has impacted. For example, as you could see, it was when Christianity had spread to the rest of the world, the first country, the first country that Christianity had spread among all the countries in the world was India. In the first century AD itself, you have Jesus Christ's disciples coming to India, to Kerala. That is what is globalization. That is what is globalization, right? And again, Islam, it had come to India. Even the Jewish religion, when the Jews were persecuted all around the world, they found a safe haven in India. Safe haven in India. That is the reason why you can see still in the northeast and in some other places in our country, you find this in Jews. And you can see Parsis having having their safe havens in India. Why? Because it was all due to this globalization. It was all due to this globalization, right? That is what you could see here. In the ancient times also, in the ancient times also, even though most of the rulers were Hindu rulers, they were willing to tolerate these other religions, other traditions, and other customs, and they were willing to accept the diversity. That is the reason why India's culture always, is what we call complex, and it is always more inclusive in nature. This has been part of India's culture for ages together. When Islam came to India in 7th century AD, it had become the dominant religion. Hinduism again benefited out of this Islam. How? The Sufi Bhakti movement, the Sufi saints. It is a combination of both the Hindu and Muslim traditions and customs. Similarly, Christianity. You can see that Christianity also, some of the traditions and customs of Christianity had become part of Hindu culture also. That is what we say, assimilating the traditions, customs, and cultures. And look at Buddhism. Buddhism. Later, Buddhism had become part of Hindu religion, Jainism, right? So this is what happened. Now, and that is the reason why we could see changes. You know, that is the reason why, yes, uh, Buddha, when it comes to globalization around the world, in other GS papers, you have to restrict yourself only to the last 30 years. You have to restrict yourself only to last 30 years. In case of social issues and essays, you can take liberty about 5,000 years, right? Otherwise, we are talking about last 30 years. So let us come back to, as I said, the recent past. So immediately after independence, most of these, you know, immediately after independence, most of these, what we call the colonies, have opted for protectionist policies. They have opted for protectionist policies because Britishers had come to India as traders. They had come to India as traders, and then they colonized the entire nation. They colonized the entire nation. They had come to India as traders, and they colonized the entire nation. And at the time of independence, India was a very poor country, backward. Had India allowed again foreign companies to come and trade within the country, there is every possibility that we could have seen a situation wherein again these foreign companies could have taken away the independence of our country. That is the reason why we have opted for what we call closed economic system. India has completely secluded itself from the rest of the world. Everything. It is not only economy, in terms of everything, in terms of culture, in terms of tradition, customs, trade, everything we have completely in terms of all these things. India had completely you know uh, secluded itself from the rest of the world. That is what we see. And then what happened? By 1990s, we had realized that we had become sufficiently strong to invite the other multinational companies and other countries' cultures to come to India. Economically, we had become sufficiently strong, and on top of it, we also has faced severe economic crisis. So we opened up our economy to the rest of the world out of this crisis, and also to make best use of this crisis. We wanted to use this crisis as an opportunity, and we opened up our economy to the rest of the world in 1990s. After this, what is the impact of this, you know, globalization on India's culture? That is what we have to look at it. What kind of impact this kind of opening up of India to the rest of the world has on India's culture? Please remember, even before we have opted for globalization, our culture was diverse. Our culture, traditions, customs, we had so much of diversity. So, when we talk about the impact of our globalization on Indian culture, you know, we don't see that kind of significant impact in terms of the traditions and customs, except that the impact could be seen more in economic terms rather than other things. More right, right, right. So yeah, but the in 1991, Narasimha Rao had to implement economic reforms because there was no option. India was facing severe financial crisis, and to overcome those financial crises, we had to take loans from IMF and World Bank. When we took the loans from IMF and World Bank, they had imposed certain conditionalities, and those conditionalities are nothing but LPG. That is what we say. They are nothing but LPG, right? It was not a proactive initiative taken by P. Narasimha Rao. It was only reactive in nature. That's what we say. So then, after we implemented this liberalization, privatization, globalization in 1991, right? What kind of changes that have taken place in India on our culture? First and foremost, the change is in the form of the value system. Before 1991, we did not have all those comforts and luxuries that people can hope for. So before 1991, what you could see was that before 1991, people were leading what we call very simple life. because we did not have those centrally air conditioned houses. We did not have those Mercedes Benz cars. We did not have special acts for rich people, private aircraft for people. So society was very simple. Money was not that important factor in the lives of the people before 1991. Why? Because before 1991 there was not there was no mobile phone. There was only one simple Doordarshan, and then there was no television channels, no internet, no media, nothing else was there. Life was very simple. Can you ever imagine what it will be like? Can you ever imagine what it will be like without having a mobile phone or internet for you now? Can you ever imagine having only one television channel, and that too, the television channel will be telecasting only in a that too, the television channel will be telecasting only for 4 hours. Doordarshan used to telecast programs only for evening at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock until 11 o'clock. That is it. And after that, there was nothing. There was nothing. Suddenly, what happened is that people of our country had access to all these comforts and luxuries. They realized the significance of money. They realized the significance of money. And they wanted badly this money. Why? Because, right, you know, they wanted badly this money because they wanted to have all those comforts and luxuries, which otherwise are available to people in the West. What we have seen as part of globalization is a demonstration effect. What is the demonstration effect? People from third world countries imitating the traditions, customs, habits of people from the West. Why? Because it is believed that in terms of culture, West is the best. West is best. Rest is waste. That is how we have been manipulated by the Western countries, right? That is how the Western countries manipulated our minds in terms of changing our culture. Unless you have a seven-figure bank balance, unless you have Mercedes Benz cars, unless you have a private jet for yourself to travel, unless you have a big mansion for you to stay, it is not considered a life worth to live in. Simplicity has simply gone out of our lives. There is nothing like simple. Right now, the world is not at all simple for us. It is very complex. It is very complicated. Why? Because we are caught between these two different types of worlds. One is finding out inner peace through the traditional culture of India, right? Finding out this inner peace through this traditional culture of India. Second one is finding out happiness through these materialistic comforts. We are caught between both these rapidly, radically opposite spectrums. Should we forget everything and focus only on having all those materialistic comforts and luxuries? Because that is what our neighbors are doing. That is what everyone is doing. That is what you can see our political leaders are doing. That is what you can see bureaucracy is doing. That is what you can see film stars are doing. They lead such a luxurious lifestyle. Even if you don't want, you will be influenced by that. In society, you are recognized on the basis of, only on the basis of what you wear. You are recognized on the basis of what you have. You are recognized on the basis of what you achieve. This is what we call typical Western culture. Unfortunately, it made so much of inroads into, you know, it's made so much of inroads into not our within our families, into ourself also. Our inner self also has been polluted, corrupted by this. We have become so impatient for success, and we want this success very badly, and we are not at all concerned about the means that we use. Why? Because society only recognizes this is success. Consumerist culture, whether we like it or not, you can see these things during these festivals, you can see that during these festivals there is this consumerist culture, $1 billion sales, right? All these what we call this online shopping websites. So what do? They offer you attractive discounts before the festival season starts. They will increase the prices, and then on top of it, they will offer you discounts. And whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not, you will have to buy it. Why? Because there is so much of discount. Yes, you know that is what we say, and that is the change that has taken place. This is the worst kind of impact we have seen in our culture and traditions. So people have lost the ability to think with both their feet on the ground because they are in this mad race to achieve the so-called success. Then, even after achieving success, are they happy? Again, not. Why? Because achieving success is one thing, retaining that success for longer periods of time is something else. Retaining success is something else. So they are always, in a hurry. They simply don't know how to enjoy life. For example, it is like riding on a tiger. You are riding on a tiger. You have to continuously ride on the tiger because if you fall down, the tiger will eat you. And can you take rest? Again, no. So you have to be on your tenterhooks all the time. And that is what happened to India. Right? And the competition, there is so much of competition everywhere else. There is so much of competition. Everywhere else there is so much of competition. And then, you know, then, you know, so all the time you are running. You don't know why you are running, but you are running. When you look back after 50 years of your life, 60 years of your life, you know that you have not achieved anything. Because whatever the money that you have earned, it will be going to your people, your family members. And on the other hand, what will you get? You will have only, problems. You will have only health problems and other problems. Right? Yes. Right. That is what. And that is what we say here with India's, impact of this globalization on India's culture. It has drastically changed. It has drastically changed the ethos of our society, the values of our society. It has made us feel bad about our traditions and cultures. This is the first thing that happened. It has, made us run after what we call mirages. It has made us run after mirages. You know, and you go there and you don't find any water also. After running, you don't find any water also. That is where this globalization has impacted our culture. And wherever you go, unfortunately, what we are seeing is that this globalization, is spreading to, you know, right? It is spreading to even villages also. So there is no what we call significance given, importance given by the people to human relations. There is nothing like a, in a right, there is nothing like a, what is called love that is left between the people. All human relationships are only commercial. That is what Karl Marx also has said long time back. He said that all human relationships are defined only by economics. They are economic in nature only. This globalization has strengthened this belief. So we don't have any kind of, in this age of globalization, we cannot even think of selfless service because people simply cannot think of it. Because capitalism says that there is no scope for any free lunches. There is nothing like selfless service. There is nothing like finding peace of mind in simplicity. If you are simple, you are called useless person. If you are simple, you are called useless person. If you are simple, you are called a person where whose life has been bypassed by the society. That is what happens. On the other hand, if you are honest, again, you don't have any, and you don't have anything to contribute to the society, and you have to be part of the society. right? You know, you don't have to be, if you have to be part of the society, you have to wear that kind of mask on your face all the time, because you're recognized by the dress you wear. You're recognized by the way that you speak. You're recognized by your habits. That is where it has affected, right? That is where it has deeply impacted our society, right? But is it because of only globalization? No. Globalization is only one of the factors. It is a change in the outlook of the people. Even before globalization, slowly we were moving towards that kind of society only. We cannot blame the globalization. Why? Because that is what we are. That is what we want to be. And that is the reason why we are blaming globalization, right? You know, we want that kind of recognition from the society. How can your globalization be made responsible for it? That is where we say it. This criticism against globalization is also not completely, fair also. Yes, it has given you opportunities. At the same time, you also have the freedom of choice. Whether you want to be part of a society or not, that is what you have to decide. And why do you want to blame globalization for it? And that is where we say here. So, yes, globalization has benefited India's culture. Definitely, it has benefited India's culture. And then what should we do? We have to recognize our strengths, and we have to see how we can make use of globalization rather than becoming these blind followers of the best. You have to protect. That is where Mahatma Gandhi becomes very important. You must be in a position. You must have be strong enough to assimilate the best features of globalization, and also to leave the worst features. That kind of strength is required. Unfortunately, that is not there in our society at this point of time. Right? I think the time is also up for today. So we can stop it here. Tomorrow we will come with another interesting topic. Tomorrow we will take up, I think, jobless growth and unemployment in India. A very interesting topic. Till then, take care of yourself. Right? Best of luck.